Hey everyone. Every now and again I come across a video where I just cannot understand why the person has put it up. And that person is usually Ali Dawah. This makes him look so bad. He's basically trying to justify child marriage to a young teenage girl. Let's take a look.
We look at the situation with what's going on now. So we look at a 9-year-old now and go, oh my gosh. But what we're saying is that we're talking about 1400 years ago. In this country, about 100 years ago, if you read William Blackstone's book on British common law, girls were betrothed at the age of 7.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, but it's not really relevant anyway, even if that was the case. The point is we've got our laws more or less right now in terms of we recognise that it's not appropriate to be married at such a young age. So saying, oh, the UK used to have messed up laws, that doesn't justify Islam having them now. That's the point.
I never said it does. I'm not saying it does. I'm just trying to prove a point that this happened 100 years ago, let alone 1400 years ago. Now, what we're saying is the following. We believe that, for example, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, we look at his character. We look at who he was. Because when an accusation is aspersion, for example, about your father, if somebody comes and says something about your father, you can hold them and say, I know my dad. And I don't, what you're accusing of him cannot be true.
So you don't believe? Yeah, but it doesn't matter how good a character you think that Muhammad has, and I think that's highly questionable. That doesn't matter. I mean, people with good character can do terrible things. So one does not rule out the other.
No, we do. What we're saying is this aspersion that he was a paedophilic person is not true. Because no.
Well, again, I'm just going to stop it there because this issue comes up. Whether he fits the medical definition of that or not is not really the point. The point is that he did commit those acts with that child, Aisha. So that's the point. It doesn't matter what you want to label him. It's what he did is important.
No. Because what that means, pedophilia is someone who has attraction to minors. So what we're saying is the Prophet Muhammad, his first wife, was 25 years older than him. So if somebody has...
Again, so what? This is such a non-point. I mean, even if Aisha was the only underage wife that he obviously had enough attraction to her to do the deed when she was 9 years old. So if he was attracted to a wider range of ages, doesn't excuse what he did.
This perversion, why at the 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-olds? We say, number one, we look at his character. The fact that he was married to one woman who was 15 years older than him in his prime when he was 25. Then when she died, he married Aisha. But just bear in mind, the marriage contract was done at the age of 6. When she became an adult, nikah. Now, when I say she became an adult, to you, a 9-year-old, not just puberty, there has to be no harm. Because in this country, it says 16 is the legal age. However, a 16-year-old girl could not be ready. It could harm her. So Islam...
Well, yeah, but it's extremely unlikely. Most people have gone through enough of their biological development and a certain amount of emotional development where it's deemed, generally speaking, it's going to be safe. Now, I mean, I would agree that some people aren't going to be ready for having relations at that age. But the point is, it's a reasonable safety level to draw a line at, whereas 9 years old is not. That is damn dangerous, and we know it medically, we know it psychologically, we know it for all sorts of reasons that it's going to, and particularly if you're going to give birth at such a young age, that brings all sorts of highly dangerous complications to the pregnancy if you're that young. We know that through science, and therefore this is why Islam is antiquated. This is why it shouldn't be followed.
It doesn't put one shoe on all. It says that each girl, it depends on her age, right? So it doesn't say, oh, you're 16 now, you can go and have intimacy. No, you might not be mentally, sexually, and physically ready. Okay. Well,
I mean, but this is the thing. I never hear these Dawah apologists say, how do you work that out? How do you know that Aisha was ready at that age? I mean, what tests do you do? Because anything that you might suggest sounds pretty invasive and abusive. But exactly how are you going to test that someone that young will be ready for that kind of relationship? Never hear that answered.
What we're saying is, if she wasn't, for example, at the age of 9, bear in mind, this is 1400 years ago, 1400 years ago. So we're saying...
Whether it's 1400 years ago or 14 years ago or today, there has been no great change in the human body in that time to make any difference. And if he's going to use this apologetic of, oh, the hot weather made her developed early, we know that is pseudo-scientific nonsense.
Girls back then and the lifespan back then is totally different. Now, one thing that I'll tell you the following.
the hell's a lifestyle got to do with anything? It's not going to change the human body, for fuck's sake.
Can you ever lie about love? Like, for example, if you, I don't know, have you ever been in love? Okay. When somebody's in love, you cannot lie about love. You can lie about a lot of stuff, but you cannot fake love. Now, we look at the Prophet's marriage to Aisha, and we look at the dynamics it was. If she was coerced, if she didn't want to be in that marriage, there were certain things that she would have shown that would have been like, hold on a second, this doesn't make sense. Number one, she was perpetually jealous. So anytime the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, argument's sake, there was a attractive woman.
Whether you're going to say she is or isn't coerced, the point is she can't consent at that time. When she's 6 years old, when she's 9 years old, she's in no position to be able to make decisions on that kind of intimate relationship. And also, what are we going for here? I mean, do you really expect it to have it in the Islamic literature? Aisha was really bitter about the abuse that she suffered. No, of course that's not going to make it into the story. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Next to him, she would have this extreme jealousy. So much so, once she made food for the Prophet, and she smashed the plate. Why? Because the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, obviously he was married. We believe in polygamy in Islam. He didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. But this is where the jealousy would come in from. I think it's more to do with the fact that she's worried about her own position, because regardless of the initial abuse, okay, this is her life now. This is how she survives. So if she's got competing wives, and she's obviously going to be worried about that. And we all know Muhammad's reputation for basically picking any wife that he wanted at any time he wanted and constantly changing the rules to suit that. So yeah, of course, in those circumstances, she fears for her position. That doesn't mean that she loved Muhammad.
He had some food that was made from his other wife. Now, Aisha broke the plate. The question I'm asking is the following, sister. If there was coercion, if this was something abnormal, why didn't his enemies use it against him and say, hold on a second, you say you're a prophet of God, why are you marrying a 9-year-old? Because she was an adult then.
Well, it wasn't that she was an adult, it was just that this kind of thing did go on, as it did in the ancient world up until fairly recently. I mean, it wasn't common, as apologists will try to make out, but it did happen, and it was obviously, there were larger issues going on. Political alliances would be formed, and there's also, connecting different powerful families and that kind of thing. There was all sorts of kind of political reasons and economic reasons that these kind of marriages would want to be set in stone early. But that doesn't justify it. And as I say, even in the ancient world, it wasn't typical. It just did happen. So therefore, if it was something that was allowed to happen, then why would anyone question it? And they're certainly not going to, if he's the prophet, they're certainly not going to risk his wrath by questioning this and maybe getting a head chopped off.
You need to understand, for example, you're 16, yeah? Have you heard Akon, did you listen to Akon? Akon, rapper. You haven't heard of Akon? Sorry, it's a different generation. Okay.
Yeah, Ali showing his age. But I have to say, just on another level, right, he's blocked her body out, which is sort of, they all do this now with women. It's just kind of like, let's cover the women up with this, obscuring the screen. But there's an extra kind of predatory vibe to this. The fact that she is 16, which he's just mentioned and she concurs with. She's 16 years old. So as bad as this rhetoric is for, like, adults, it's even worse when you're saying it to someone who isn't even reached adulthood yet. It just feels extra creepy from Ali here.
Akon, a different generation. Akon had a track. It was called "Put the Blame on Me." Why? Because he went to a club. There was I think, a 11 or 12-year-old girl that was fully matured.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So what I'm saying is, you can't take a 9-year-old today and a 9-year-old back then and equate them, because the whole dynamic, the climate and the time was totally different.
Yeah, but I mean, as creepy as this is, you bringing this up. I mean, your argument is saying that what, girls this day look older than they did back in 1400 years ago. You seem to be arguing against your own position by the example you just used.
Then see, this is what I'm saying. You cannot take, look, let me tell you something. You can go to America and you can see 12-year-old girls. They are so developed, you will think this girl is 24 years old. So what I'm saying is,
again, like, why would you put this out? This just makes you look really creepy, what you just said there. Why is he putting this out? Does he want the security services to be monitoring? I mean, I hope they already are with some of the previous stuff he said, but you really are just like flashing a neon sign that says Predator.
Following that, we look at the Prophet's character, we look at his dynamics with Aisha. How could Aisha be coerced and be so jealous of the Prophet?
Because she can't consent. By definition, she's a small child. That's it. That's all you need to know. I really doubt when she was 6 years old playing with a doll, she was kind of like, oh yeah, that 50-year-old man, I'd really like to, be his wife. It's just not happening.
Why did she have that romantic relationship with him? Like, she was jealous, they raced together.
She had no choice.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, and they would drink from the same cup. She never once, ever contested.
Again, what choice would she have at that point? Her father and her mother has already agreed to essentially sell her off to Muhammad. He is this prophet of this religion that's gaining speed and it's gaining numbers and it's conquering territory. I mean, what's she going to do at that point? She says no, it could cost her her life.
Young girl would know what I mean. Like, it could be like anything in any relationship.
Yeah.
People can go by whatever they say. You wouldn't have to love them.
Okay, look.
Well, yeah, exactly. She made a good point there. And this is a funny thing. I mean, Ali's basically getting outwitted by a 16-year-old here, and he's struggling with this argument. I think partly I would hope that's like his conscience, the fact that he's trying to sell this to a 16-year-old girl. But it's also, I think she's smarter than him, quite frankly.
We have, for example, in our Islamic hadith literature, narrations, there are so many things Aisha talks about.
Yeah.
She talks about, for example, when she got angry and she smashed the plate. She talks about so many things that happened between them, between the Prophet. She does not once ever mention.
I mean, I love it. This is the only example we can give is Aisha smashing the plate. That apparently means that she wasn't coerced into this relationship. I mean, this is weak even by Ali's standard.
Mention that I never wanted to marry him. And not only that, when he died, she could have easily gone and get married again. The thing is this,
what? I'm sorry, Ali, did you just say she could go and get married again? There's an explicit Quranic verse that says that the Prophet's wife, all of his wives, could not be remarried. I mean, it's in the Quran. So you're just lying now.
Because Sorry?
She stayed a widow.
Yeah, she stayed a widow. Not only that, she is one of the biggest scholars in Islam. Because of her young age, hadith literature. We learn it from her because she was so young in age. But what I'm saying is the following. We say the Prophet waited. Don't forget, when was the marriage made? At the age of 6. When was the marriage consummated? At the age of 9. If the Prophet Muhammad had that inclination, why did he wait 3 years? For what?
Well, who knows? I mean, there could be a number of reasons. I'm not exactly sure the chronology. I mean, he might have been away on some long campaign or something like that. There might have been political reasons for it. Maybe he was just more attracted to her at that slightly later age. That doesn't make it any less problematic, my friend.
For her to become an adult. He waited because otherwise, if he had that inclination, an individual who has pedophilic inclinations, he doesn't say, oh, how old are you? 6. I'm going to come back when you're 9. Oh, how old are you? 7. I'm going to come back when you're 10. Why did he wait 3 years?
But it doesn't matter, though. The point is, he still had those relations with her at an incredibly young and inappropriate and abusive age. That's the point. It doesn't matter that he waited. It's like, oh, wow, I'm slightly less of a predator. I mean, how is this an argument?
For her to mature and become an adult. That's...
No one becomes an adult at 9 years old. That's just a biological reality.
What we expect. And there is nothing...
I completely understand your point.
Yeah.
And I think, especially now, like, morally, I'm just thinking,
Islamically. So what does Islam say about today? Like, is that, like, basically, does that apply?
Yeah, she's asking you what the morality is. And you're just going to show her again. I mean, like I did in a previous video with Mohammed Ajab, this is the kind of thing which I think is reasonable to say within Islam does not fit with current British values.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, let me make it simple. Nowhere in our religion, sister, does it say that we have to marry a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old. We use that model. Let me tell you how.
But you shouldn't condemn that as your prophet.
No, we don't condemn it. We condone it. How?
Yeah, so there you are. You condone it. You condone that terrible act of abuse. And this is why, you're quite a dangerous person, quite frankly, because you're encouraging other Muslims to follow this practice. You should condemn it.
Let me explain. For example, the Prophet did the contract at 6. He married at 9. Okay, good. So if I have a son...
Didn't they do, I'm sorry, I'm not
No,
sure
it's fine.
but I don't know what it is in Arabic, but sighing, where instead of...
Say that again?
Sighing, instead of...
What's that?
Having sex with her, he was in between her thighs, so then it didn't...
No. I never heard that. No, I've never heard of that. So...
Yeah, I reckon he has heard of that. I mean, I haven't heard this brought up in a while, this whole thigh thing. I don't think, I mean, it's not in the Quran. I don't think there's anything in the Hadiths about this. So I think this is more, there have been a few fatwas maybe on this whole thying thing, but I'm not going to condemn Islam for that so much because it's not like it's in any of the original Quran or Hadiths. As far as I know, anybody, if I've made a mistake, anybody does know a legitimate Hadith where this is coming up, let me know in the comments. But as far as I know, this is just kind of like crazy clerics doing fatwas kind of in more modern times.
Yeah, so the thing is this, we say in Islam that, for example, if she's the age of, for example, if my son is 17 years old and he meets a girl who's 15, what's the legal age in this country? Good. I will look at the Prophet's example, the fact that he waited for Aisha to become an adult. I will tell my son, we follow the same example, you have to wait for her to become 16.
Again, but it really isn't the same. I mean, obviously, it would still be a criminal offence, and it's good that we have that minimum age there to prevent the abuse and the risk of children. But like to pretend at 9 years old it's not a hell of a lot worse than 15-year-old is delusional. Saying that you could compare those two things is absolutely crazy. And also, here's the other thing as well. I mean, if you've got somebody of a similar age, like who's also only a teenager, hasn't even reached full adulthood themselves, again, it's still in a different kind of category than some 50-year-old man doing it. I mean, if you can't see how extra creepy that is, I don't know what I can do for you.
So we use the same model. Nowhere in Islam does it say you have...
married her at the age of 16, is that not child marriage?
No, because we say she become an adult at the age of 9. So...
at the age of...
See, again, she's just schooling it. It's like, isn't it still child marriage? It's like, no, because you decided to call her an adult. Yeah, well, she's still a child.
6 when they got married.
No. Okay, so in conventionally in the UK, when we talk about marriage, it means sex. Well, actually, people have sex before marriage. Okay.
The hell are you talking about? Doesn't mean that at all. I don't know where he's going with it.
Islam is different. Having a marital contract and consummating marriage is different. So a contract can be made between two individuals.
It's different in every other marriage as well.
Individuals, and then 2 years later, that individual can say, "I changed my mind," and that marriage is broken. The consummation.
Yeah, what would have happened to Aisha though? Let's say that happened. I mean, do we really think her or her family would have survived that decision? I don't.
Happens when she becomes an adult. Do you get it? That's why the Prophet waited for her to become an adult at the age of 9. And
again, there are no adults at the age of 9, Ali. You are a predator if you think that.
That's why we follow the example.
So if you have a daughter...
If I had a daughter, and let's say she is, for example, 12,
yeah.
and I have a 16-year-old boy who comes and says to me...
Or a 56-year-old man.
Okay. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Or a 56-year-old man. See, she's pointing to the point there. Ali wants to like dull down the temperature on it by sort of saying, "Oh, it was just a teenage boy. Come just talk to her underage daughter." It's a fuck side worse if you have a 50-year-old man. He knows it, and she's calling him out on it.
No problem. So, for example, if I have a 50-year-old man who comes and asks my daughter's hand, I would go to my daughter. And ask her, for example. This is a common question. My daughter is not going to want to marry a 50-year-old man. That's my...
How do you know? How do you know? I mean, you've previously said in other videos that you'd be quite happy to marry your 9-year-old child off, your 9-year-old daughter off to a 50-year-old man. So you're now trying to insert this, oh, well, she wouldn't want to do it. Well, you're sort of changing your tune a little bit, aren't you? And I think you're lying, actually, because I think you'd be quite happy to do it because, you're that way inclined.
My daughter, and again, we did have that incident. There was a situation where there was a 50-year-old guy who married a 16-year-old. Again, if we believe, do you believe a 50-year-old man can marry a 16-year-old? Why not? On what basis is that wrong? Like, for example, if a 50-year-old man came and said he wants to date you or marry you, okay, why? Okay, I'm just trying to understand. Isn't the legal age 16? Okay, so why? I'm just curious. I'm trying to. Okay, on what basis?
Again, he's really sounding predatory here, but I mean, well, we'll see what if she actually answers this.
On what basis are you saying that is not normal?
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. So, 50-year-old wants to date a 16-year-old. Is there anything wrong with that according to the Western world values? No, there isn't.
Really?
No.
Yeah, she says really? No, because there is something wrong with that. Now, yes, is it breaking the law? No. The legal age of consent is 16. But the point is, you have custom, okay? You have an actual knowledge of the fact that it would be wrong, morally speaking, on some level, to have such a massive age gap. There would clearly be a massive question mark over the intentions of that man who is basically trying to take advantage of a girl that young. So yeah, this would not be condoned just because it's not legal, or excuse me, just because it's not illegal. That doesn't mean that people don't think it's wrong. It just means that yes, okay, we recognise that this is the minimum age of consent. But any parent worth their salt will be very, very upset with that kind of situation. And again, it's not to say you can't have an age gap between adults. But someone who hasn't reached full adulthood yet, yeah, that just seems to be taking advantage.
Oh, okay, legally, is it illegal?
No,
good.
fine.
Okay, so what I'm saying is,
do you not think that is wrong?
okay, then if it's morally wrong, why is the illegal age 16?
This is what he said, because you have a consent there as a minimum level of protection. You recognise that once somebody has reached the age of 16, there's been enough emotional maturity and physical maturity that they're no longer in the danger zone they would be as a younger child. They are sort of transitioning towards adulthood. So you have that recognition. And also, you know, teenagers of that age are probably going to be with each other. That's kind of, you know, how kids will kind of get their earlier experiences. Not with 50-year-old men. I mean, it's creepy.
So which means that if they morally saw it wrong, they would not allow it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she's looking at the camera like, I'm 16 and I understand this. I've got to explain it to Ali, who is, I don't know, he's probably pushing 50 himself now, but you can just see that look on her face when she looks at the camera. It's like, yes, you are in the right. He is the weirdo here.
So what I'm saying, what about an 18-year-old and a 50-year-old? Is it right or wrong? Wrong. But this is subjective. All we're just saying is the following.
It's 9. And I don't get how married.
Yeah, again, I mean, she just brings it back to reality. You're talking about a 9-year-old. I mean, comparing it to an 18-year-old is just worlds apart. And everyone with a rational mind understands that.
You can marry someone who's 6 years old.
No. But what we're saying is this, sister. You're looking at dynamics today. For you, maybe a 50-year-old, 50-year-old, 53-year-old is an old, grumpy man.
For everyone that age, there is not a 16-year-old who is going to want to go out with a 55-year-old or whatever. That's just fact. And there's certainly not a 9-year-old who's going to want to.
But I'm telling you, men back then and how they were, it's not. We're looking at the two dynamics, which is today.
Oh, what was he going to say now? What 55-year-old men back then were like? They had the virility and youth of a 20-year-old or something, and that's how they looked. I mean, is this going to be, you know, the first 3 generations of Muslims or whatever? They were just like, you know, semi-immortal or something. They didn't age. I mean, what the fuck is he talking about?
This time, and we're comparing it back then.
Yeah, but if you was to put faith in a book, should it not be a book that is equivalent for all the time?
But it is.
So again, she's just schooling him. Yes, if you've got this book, which is supposed to be perfect from God, you've got the Quran, and this is the best it can do with morality, then it really just does show it's not likely to be from a God, is it?
Follow that example. Remember I told you if my daughter's 12 and a 16-year-old boy was to come and ask for a hand,
it was like in the Prophet's case where she was 6.
Yes. No, but we applied the same thing. The fact that he waited 3 years for her to become an adult, we applied that to today's time and say my daughter will have to become the age of 16. So that.
Oh, do you see that sleight of hand there? So basically, he thinks he's been fair in that example by saying, "Oh yeah, well, he'd waited from the age of 6 to 9. That would be the same as waiting for his daughter to reach the age of 16 because it's roughly about the same time, a 3-year gap." I mean, that's such a cheap way of trying to dodge around this problematic area of Islam.
We would have to wait for her 4 years. The Prophet waited 3 years for her to become an adult. He would have to wait 4 years for her to become an adult.
9 years old is physically like.
But again, based on what standards? You're looking at the Western world today. You're looking at a 9-year-old today. We're saying the analogy, your example you have, it doesn't equate to what's going on back then.
Yes, it does. There is no difference between a 9-year-old now and a 9-year-old back then. You're talking 1,400 years. You're not talking 140,000 years or more. You're not talking about some massive length of time where there might have been some significant change in the basic human structure. We were pretty much the same as we were 1,400 years ago.
Because the lifespan is totally different. A 9-year-old today and a 9-year-old back then, they were boys going to war at the age of 12, 13. Today you got 24-year-olds playing PlayStation at home.
What has that got to do with anything? It doesn't mean that their bodies are any different.
You can't. Do you get what I'm trying to say? You can't look at a 16-year-old today and back then. So, but if we go to even.
Yeah, you can, and this is the problem. This is why this is one of the biggest issues within Islam. This is why so many Muslims leave the religion, because they cannot square the immorality of this with this supposedly wonderful prophet who is the the inspiration for all mankind for all time.
Christianity, the argument, for example, in the book of Numbers, not even Rebecca, go to the book of Numbers, it tells you that Jesus, thank you. So what I'm saying is, in a nutshell, it's all right, sister. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is, I forgot my point. Yeah, so
yeah, your point was basically doing whataboutery. You're about to make some stupid claim about the Bible as if that somehow justifies Muhammad doing what he did with Aisha.
So in a nutshell, sister, what we're seeing is that it's two different worlds that was, and not only that, what we're seeing is,
yeah, the two different worlds is the one that you live in, and then there's reality, and that's the problem. You might want to join our world one of these days.
Not a single, oh, that was it. In Christianity, in the book of Numbers, Jesus is the God of the Old Testament. He orders men to go and kill kill men, women, and any girl that has not been touched by men, who's a virgin, keep them for yourself. So if we're going to reject the Prophet Muhammad based on this premise, then we'll have to reject the God of the Old Testament, the Christianity, based on that. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
This is not even just whataboutery. He's completely changed the topic now. I mean, you're so far removed from the issue because you know you can't argue it. You know you're getting owned by a 16-year-old here. I mean, this is a pitiful performance from Ali.
If we was to use the same standards, if we're going to say the Prophet Muhammad cannot be a true prophet because he married Aisha at night, yeah. If we use that, then Christianity, God stipulated taking little girls for yourself. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But believe me, look, sister, the Prophet, trust me, how you feel, I know what you're saying. And I thought about this. I totally understand. Before I came to Islam, I had the same concerns. How? But when I looked into it, sister, and I looked into the dynamics and who the Prophet was, he married a woman who was 70 years old.
Yeah, we could still marry a child. We still have sexual attraction to a young person.
If he did that, then why was his only wife, one of his wives was the only one that Aisha was 9? Why was other wives above, one was old 70, all of them were widows and divorces? If he had that...
First of all, he brought up the situation with Khadija, his first wife. Oh, well, she was older. Well, we understand why. She was rich. She was a businesswoman. She had power and influence. So he therefore clearly married for those reasons. Or you can make a plausible case that that was the reason that he married her. So there may have been no attraction there at all. But secondly, Muhammad had access to basically unlimited slaves who he could then, thanks to his own revelations in the Quran, use the way he wanted. How do we know the ages of those girls? Because you're basically talking about an infinite supply, which could have been of any age, and he could have had his way with any of them. So how do we honestly know that Aisha was the only one? We actually don't.
Explanation. Why was only one of his wives? And not only that, why did he have to be a wife? He could have just done what he wanted with her, because he could say, I'm a prophet. He didn't.
Well, no, actually, no, it's not because he's prophet. It's because that's basically what the Quran says. That, your right hand possess, you can sleep with them. So, yeah, you've raised the point, though. How do you know that there wasn't anyone else that he slept with that was her age?
So which shows that his character in question, sister, is not what we think he is. Because we have white middle-aged men who are doing pedophilia, and go...
For you to, again, do whataboutery, I mean, particularly in the UK with the grooming gangs, you really, if you live in a glass house, you shouldn't throw stones. We know the disproportionate level from the Muslim community that are involved in those gangs. It is way off the charts. So pointing to someone else again, just sad whataboutery.
These countries, there is no way we can equate that to the Prophet Muhammad, because his character and who he was.
Yes, we can, and we will, because you've not demonstrated why we should look at it any different way.
And his mission that he came with and how truthful he was, we look at that, we look at his life and his marriage with Aisha. There's not a single narration that Aisha says, he coerced me, he forced me. Rather, she was jealous. She would race with him. She would speak about good stuff. So the thing is...
Yeah, we've already addressed all those arguments. He's just repeating himself now because, again, he's struggling. I mean, I think this girl did a really good job here. She's just absolutely making him look like a fool and a really creepy old guy.
Couldn't that not be because obviously she's a young girl and you can be easily manipulated?
That's true.
So exactly, she raises up a great point. She could easily be manipulated, even if she thought somehow this was a good idea. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't going to be sold that in a couple of years you're going to suddenly be, in a very uncomfortable position. It's not how it would have been sold to her. No, it would have been like, oh, you'll be a princess or something like this, in a way that you could manipulate a small child. So she's absolutely right.
It could have been, but if that's the case, why did it not ever come out even when he died? She could have said, you know what, all this time.
Well, again, once you're in that position of power, which obviously she rose to as one of his wives, once you got used to that lifestyle, you're going to think, well, I want to maintain this. I'm now in a position where I've got all these people who think I'm wonderful. I can play power politics. It also could be, Stockholm syndrome.
She stayed a widow. For the rest of her, she died a widow.
Again, he's acting as if there isn't a command in the Quran. I can't remember the verse. Maybe somebody can put it in the in the chat. I mean, there's a verse in the Quran that says you can't marry Muhammad's wives after he's died. This wasn't her choice.
Not an impossibility. What we're saying is all I'm saying is one thing. Don't look at a 9-year-old today and a 9-year-old back then. If you do that,
yeah, don't do that, because then you realise how horrible what Muhammad did was.
it's problematic. I'll be honest with you, even for me. If I look at a 9-year-old, I have a daughter, 7, and I'm thinking that 2 years later, it would be problematic. But I know a 9-year-old Aisha is not the 9-year-old today.
But again, this is not what you said before. I'll repeat it. You have said in the past that if the right bloke came along, it wouldn't matter if he was 50 years old. If you thought that your daughter was ready, however that's meant to mean, you'd be quite happy to marry her off at 9. Now you're trying to backtrack because if you said that to this young lady, she would probably be running in the other direction.
Believe me, it's not.
So, like, when you mean, sorry,
No, please.
When you mean, like, not a 9-year-old, you mean, like, she was, like...
She was an adult. No, she was an adult. Look, like I said before, you will have...
Again, that look to the camera is brilliant. Oh man, this young lady is absolutely brilliant in this video. I hope she talks to all the other Dawah clowns as well, because he's fantastic.
12-year-olds
Yeah, I completely understand
that are fully... Let me tell you something. They are more developed than certain women.
Yeah.
So I'm saying the following. But is she not under the legal age? Do we not have a...
Do you not know that would still hurt the girl, like...
I'm not talking about... Yeah. What I'm saying is this. If that was the case, the Prophet would never marry her at 9. The fact that he waited 3 years means that she was sexually, mentally, and physically ready to be married.
No, or he was ready to do the deed, and it didn't matter whether she was ready.
At the age of 9. But the reason you're saying that is because you're looking at a 9-year-old today.
Yes, that's what you do. If you want to wonder what would have been like for a 9-year-old back then, you would look at a 9-year-old today and you think, that's fucked up, isn't it?
That's where the issues are. They're not the same. No, it's fine, sister. You cannot have a 9-year-old today and compare them to a 9-year-old 1400 years ago. Do you know what 1400 years means?
Yeah, it means exactly dick. That's what it means. And she's not buying it, and nobody of a rational mind buys this argument.
1400 years. How old are you? 16. 16 years ago, you wasn't here. I'm talking 1400 years ago. The dynamics are totally different. Totally different. Let me tell you something. That's the reason why not a single person in history ever contested the prophethood because of this. Not one.
Again, that's a nothing argument. It was an allowed practice back then. So therefore, why would they contest it on that issue?
One person in history, Christians, Jews, Hindus, never came with this. You know why? Because that was the absolute norms of society, of marrying, because they were adults.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't the norm, as I say. It was allowed, but it wasn't the norm. Most people still married at considerably older ages than 9.
Normal back then, but...
No, but they were adults. It's not about normal back then. They were adults. You know how you see a 16... Are you 16? Are you an adult? You are. You're a teenager, but you're an adult. So
the teenage years, they're kind of transition years, aren't they? Where you're gradually turning from a child into adult over a number of years. So, yeah, you recognise at certain steps, like at 16-year-old, okay, you completed part of that journey. So you've got the, you can marry, although with your parents' permission, you've got the age of consent there, you get your national insurance number. So, yeah, I mean, at 16, you recognise you're on your way, but you're still not a full adult.
Is this, look, just as we see you as a 16-year-old adult, that was the norm then. Would anybody come and say, oh my God?
Again, we don't see her as a 16-year-old adult. And, to go back to the grooming gangs, maybe this is the problem. I mean, the fact is, look at him. I mean, he's basically saying that he can't recognise that while she is on her way to adulthood, she is still not a full adult. And for anyone of Ali's age, really anyone who's not a teenager really shouldn't be looking at her in any kind of way for a relationship. That's how normal people behave. When you say, oh, well, she looks like an adult to me, that's when problems start.
Why has she got a boyfriend? People were like, no, she's at an illegal age. The same thing applied then. If it didn't, you would have mass people speaking against it, saying to the Prophet, why are you marrying a child? Not a single narration.
Yeah, again, you're just saying the same arguments over and over again. They're terrible. And, you're just making a fool of yourself.
But that's from Upsell, that's all.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Do you have a Quran?
No.
Can I give you one?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, thank you. It's a yes. Well, thank you very much, sister. Do you have any other questions?
Oh, okay,
Thank you, sir. Can I have my?
so much.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your questions as well. Thank you.
Hope you all enjoyed it. Should have another video out on Friday. I'm hoping to do another live stream within the next week or so as well. So I will see you all in the next one.